Across Africa, hidden behind boardroom doors and family estates, lie dynasties whose wealth has flowed for generations. These are not the overnight billionaires you hear about in tech headlines, but families whose fortunes were built brick by brick, passed down, and preserved through time. From modest beginnings in Tanzania, with the Bakresa family's small restaurant, to Nigeria's Ibru dynasty that transformed frozen fish into an empire, and Angola's Dos Santos family, whose political power fueled vast riches, each chapter reveals how old money is created, protected, and expanded. We'll journey through diamond empires like the Oppenheimers, global luxury giants like the Ruperts, and the timeless legacies of the Dantata and Rabu families. This is not just a story about wealth, but about endurance, influence, and dynasties that refuse to fade. Stay tuned as we count down the 12 richest old money families in Africa, from the quietly powerful to the unstoppable giants at the very top. In the number 12 position, we have the Bakresa family of Tanzania, a dynasty that shows how old money can rise not from inherited crowns or royal palaces, but from the sweat, vision, and boldness of one man who dared to dream bigger than his circumstances. Their journey begins with Said Salim Bakresa, a school dropout who chose business over classrooms. In Dar es Salaam, he started small, opening a modest restaurant that catered to truck drivers and everyday workers. To most, it looked like nothing more than a food stall. But for Bakresa, it was the seed of a fortune that would grow to dominate East Africa. That seed became the Bakresa Group, a massive conglomerate spanning food, beverages, packaging, plastics, logistics, and even media. Their flagship brand, Azam, is so deeply woven into daily life that it's almost impossible to walk through a market in Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, or Mozambique without spotting it. From sodas and juices to wheat flour and ice cream, Azam has become a household name, powering an empire with annual revenues estimated at close to $1 billion. What makes the Bakresa family truly stand out among Africa's old money dynasties is their strategy. They didn't chase risky ventures or short-lived trends. Instead, they built their wealth on the fundamentals of life: food, packaging, and distribution. Industries that remain stable in good times and bad. This is how old money is built, on foundations so solid that wealth doesn't just survive, it multiplies across generations. Despite their reach and wealth, the Bakresa family isn't known for flashiness. You won't see them parading on magazine covers or flaunting their fortune on global stages. Instead, they represent the quiet strength of African legacy wealth, creating jobs, feeding millions, and building industries that outlive political shifts and economic storms. Their story proves that Africa's richest dynasties aren't only born from colonial inheritance or oil fields. Sometimes they're born in a restaurant kitchen, fueled by resilience, vision, and the determination to never settle for less. And as powerful as this story is, it's only the beginning. Because from here on, the fortunes grow even bigger, the empires more established, and the legacies more legendary. In the number 11 position, we have the Ibru family of Nigeria, one of West Africa's most iconic old money dynasties, a name that has shaped industries, created jobs, and left a legacy that stretches far beyond the business world. The story begins with Michael Ibru, the visionary patriarch who, in the 1950s, walked away from a safe career in government to take a gamble on business. With nothing but determination, he entered Nigeria's frozen fish trade, a bold move at a time when the idea seemed risky and untested. Yet that gamble would become the foundation of an empire. Through the Ibru organization, Michael and his brothers built one of Nigeria's most diversified family businesses. Their reach extended into shipping, aviation, oil and gas, construction, banking, and even media. They weren't just selling fish anymore. They were building an empire that touched every corner of Nigerian life. From the docks of Apapa to the skies with Aero Contractors Airline, the Ibru name became synonymous with enterprise, ambition, and wealth that lasted. But what truly makes the Ibru family a symbol of old money is how they use their wealth and influence to embed themselves into the fabric of Nigerian society. Over the decades, the family produced not only business leaders, but also politicians, philanthropists, and cultural influencers. Their wealth became generational, with the Ebru children and grandchildren inheriting not only money, but also power and prestige. That's the essence of old money, when wealth isn't just about numbers in a bank account, but about legacy, identity, and long-term influence. Like all dynasties, the Ibru family has faced turbulence, power struggles, internal rivalries, and the challenge of managing such a vast empire tested their unity. But even through these storms, the Ibru name has endured. The Ibru organization remains a force, and the family story is still one of resilience and reinvention, a dynasty that helped define Nigeria's modern business landscape. The Ibru legacy shows that old money in Africa isn't just about mining or oil. It can be built from scratch, multiplied across industries, and passed down to create a powerful lineage. They rose from the frozen fish trade to become one of Nigeria's most respected families. And as our countdown continues, the fortunes will only get larger and the legacies even more monumental. In the number 10 position, we have the Dos Santos family of Angola, a dynasty whose story blends power politics and fortune in a way that has captured headlines across the world. Their rise is tied to José Eduardo dos Santos, Angola's president for nearly 4 decades. Under his leadership, the family amassed control over some of Angola's most lucrative industries, particularly oil, banking, telecommunications, and cement. In a nation where oil revenues define the economy, the Dos Santos family sat at the very top of the pyramid. The family's most famous figure is Isabel dos Santos, often dubbed Africa's richest woman. She built a fortune through stakes in telecom, giant Unitel, Portuguese banks, retail, and diamond companies. At her peak, Forbes estimated her wealth at over $3 billion. But what makes the Dos Santos family's wealth distinctly old money is not just Isabel's empire. It's the way the family positioned itself across industries, passing influence and assets through bloodlines, intertwining state power with private gain. Critics argue that much of this wealth was born out of state favoritism and political power. Yet that doesn't erase the dynasty's endurance. Like many old money families around the world, the Dos Santos clan has leveraged its position to secure multi-generational wealth. They own real estate in Portugal, investments across Europe, and assets that ensure their influence outlives political office. In recent years, scandals and corruption charges have put cracks in the family's image. Isabel faced investigations, frozen assets, and global scrutiny. Yet even with reputational damage, the Dos Santos family remains immensely wealthy and influential. Their story is a reminder that old money dynasties are not always celebrated for how they earned their fortunes. Sometimes they are remembered for how they held on to power. The Dos Santos legacy is complicated, controversial, and powerful. And as we continue climbing this list, you'll see families whose fortunes were built not just on politics, but on industries that shaped Africa's global reputation. In the number 9 position, we have the Rupert family of South Africa, a dynasty that has turned luxury into a generational empire. Their story begins with Anton Rupert, who in the 1940s started with a mere £10 borrowed to launch a small cigarette company. Few could have predicted that this small venture would evolve into one of the world's greatest old money fortunes. Anton's brilliance was in spotting opportunities others ignored. He transformed his cigarette company into Rembrandt Group, which expanded into investments, finance, and healthcare. But his most legendary creation was Richemont, a luxury powerhouse that owns some of the world's most iconic brands: Cartier, Montblanc, Dunhill, Van Cleef and Arpels, and Chloé. If you've seen a Cartier watch or a Montblanc pen, you've seen the Rupert family's fingerprints on global luxury. Today, the family is led by Johann Rupert, who has continued to grow the dynasty's influence. With a net worth exceeding $14 billion, he is Africa's richest man as of 2025. What makes the Rupert story a classic tale of old money is how carefully they've sustained their wealth across generations. They've avoided flashy risks, instead focusing on timeless industries like luxury goods, fine wine, and healthcare. The family's Remgro Limited also holds stakes in banking, media, and energy, giving them a diversified base that ensures the fortune lasts. Unlike newer billionaires who chase short-lived trends, the Ruperts understand that true old money wealth is built on brands that never go out of style. A luxury watch, a fine bottle of wine, a prestigious pen, these are symbols that endure. And with every generation, the Rupert name grows stronger, not weaker. The Rupert family is not just wealthy. They represent South Africa's place in the global luxury market. They've proven that African dynasties can sit comfortably among the world's elite, shaping taste, style, and culture. But remember, in this countdown, even the power of Cartier and Montblanc is only the begin. In the number 8 position, we have the Oppenheimer family of South Africa, a dynasty whose name is carved into the very foundation of global wealth. For over a century, they weren't just another rich family. They were the gatekeepers of the world's diamonds. Their story begins with Ernest Oppenheimer, a German immigrant who arrived in South Africa in the early 1900s. Armed with ambition and an eye for opportunity, he quickly rose through the mining ranks until he took control of De Beers, the company that would come to define an era of wealth and influence. Through Ernest and later his son Harry, the Oppenheimers built an empire that stretched far beyond diamonds. With their mining conglomerate Anglo-American, they gained control over gold, platinum, and other resources, making them one of the most powerful families, not just in Africa, but in the world. For decades, the Oppenheimers didn't simply mine diamonds. They controlled supply, demand, and price, holding a monopoly so strong it became the stuff of legend. If you bought a diamond anywhere in the world during the 20th century, chances are the Oppenheimers had a hand in it. But what makes their story a tale of true old money is not just their fortune, but the way they institutionalized it. Wealth for the Oppenheimers wasn't a mere bank balance. It was a system, a global network of power. They were deeply embedded in politics, finance, and philanthropy. The family funded universities, shaped economic policy, and played quiet roles in South Africa's turbulent political landscape. Harry Oppenheimer, in particular, became a household name, admired for his business genius, but also scrutinized for the family's overwhelming dominance. By the time Nicky Oppenheimer inherited the reins, the dynasty had become synonymous with prestige. Even after selling their controlling stake in De Beers in 2012 for over $5 billion, the Oppenheimers proved they knew when to move, when to preserve, and when to transform. Today, they are still among Africa's wealthiest families, with investments in conservation, banking, and global enterprises. Their story is not just about diamonds. It's about creating a dynasty so entrenched that even when they step away from an industry, their influence still lingers. The Oppenheimer name remains a glittering symbol of African old money at its most enduring. In the number 7 position, we have the Mansour family of Egypt, a dynasty that proves old money doesn't always come from mines or oil fields, but from trade, vision, and global partnerships. Their story began in 1952 with Lotfi Mansour, who founded the Mansour Group as a modest trading business. At the time, few could have imagined that this small venture would grow into one of Africa's largest and most influential conglomerates. But the Mansours had something rare, the ability to spot opportunities before anyone else. Their defining moment came when they secured the exclusive rights to distribute General Motors vehicles in Egypt. That single partnership transformed their business, positioning them as industrial leaders in a rapidly modernizing country. Soon they expanded into Caterpillar machinery, giving them dominance in construction and infrastructure across the Middle East and Africa. By the 1970s and 1980s, the Mansour name had become synonymous with progress, their empire touching nearly every industry that powered Egypt's economy. But the family didn't stop there. Over time, the Mansour Group expanded globally, building a presence in over 100 countries. From retail and consumer goods to banking, telecoms, and real estate, their empire grew with precision and foresight. Today, the family fortune is managed across 3 brothers, Mohammed, Youssef, and Yassin Mansour, each steering different parts of the group. Collectively, their wealth is estimated in the billions, and their companies employ tens of thousands, making them one of Africa's most important economic dynasties. What sets the Mansour family apart as true old money is not just their size, but their adaptability. While other fortunes crumbled in times of political and economic upheaval, the Mansours thrived by diversifying their interests and expanding beyond Egypt's borders. They invested in global markets, built relationships with multinational giants, and ensured their dynasty was never dependent on one industry alone. Culturally, the Mansours are deeply respected, balancing their immense influence with philanthropy in education and healthcare. Their quiet power has endured for over 70 years, and their legacy continues to grow stronger with each generation. The Mansour family story is proof that Africa's old money isn't limited to resources in the ground. Sometimes it's built through vision, partnerships, and a commitment to building industries that stand the test of time. In the number 6 position, we have the Rabu family of Nigeria, another dynasty whose story intertwines tradition, resilience, and ambition. The roots of this fortune trace back to Khalifa Ishaku Rabu, a businessman who rose to prominence in the mid-20th century. He built a foundation in commodities, cement, and trade, establishing the Rabu name as one of influence in northern Nigeria. Though his businesses faced government seizures during turbulent political times, his entrepreneurial spirit was passed down, and it would fuel an even greater empire in the hands of his son. Enter Abdul Samad Rabiu, the heir who transformed the family's wealth into something monumental. Today, he leads the BUA Group, one of Africa's fastest-growing conglomerates, with interests in cement, sugar, flour, infrastructure, ports, and real estate. Under his leadership, BUA has become a direct rival to Aliko Dangote's empire, driving competition in industries that are vital to Nigeria's growth. With annual revenues surpassing billions of dollars, BUA isn't just a company. It's a symbol of modern African industry powered by old family roots. What sets the Rabiu family apart as old money is the continuity of vision across generations. Where some family fortunes fade, the Rabius adapted, expanded, and used setbacks as stepping stones. Abdul Samad Rabiu's current net worth places him among the richest Africans, but his family's story isn't about one man alone. It's about a dynasty that refused to disappear. Culturally, the Rabiu family is deeply respected in Nigeria, balancing tradition with modern corporate ambition. Abdul Samad is also known for philanthropy, giving back through education and healthcare initiatives, ensuring that the Rabiu name is tied not only to wealth but also to impact. This is the essence of old money, a family that weathers storms, rebuilds, and thrives generation after generation. The Rabiu story is proof that in Africa, dynasties don't just survive, they reinvent themselves to grow even stronger. And as our countdown rises, the wealth and influence we encounter will only grow more staggering. In the number 5 position, we have the Al-Amudi family, a dynasty that straddles two worlds, Ethiopia and Saudi Arabia, while holding one of Africa's largest private fortunes. At the center of this story is Sheikh Mohammed Hussein Al-Amudi, a billionaire whose roots trace back to Ethiopia, but whose influence spans continents. His empire is vast, stretching across construction, mining, oil, energy, and agriculture. Through his company, Midrock, Mohammed International Development Research and Organization Companies, Al-Amudi has invested billions into Ethiopia's economy, from gold mining to cement factories, from large-scale farms to real estate. His wealth is not just immense, it's diverse. In addition, his Coral Petroleum Holdings controls major oil refineries and fuel stations across Sweden and Morocco, cementing his place as a global tycoon. With an estimated net worth hovering around $10 billion, Al-Amudi has consistently ranked among the richest men in Africa and the Middle East. But what makes the Al-Amudi family old money is the generational dimension. His children are now stepping into leadership roles, ensuring the dynasty continues beyond one man's lifetime. This transition from patriarch to heirs marks the shift from wealth of an individual to wealth of a family, a hallmark of enduring dynasties. Their investments in Ethiopia have created jobs for hundreds of thousands, embedding their influence deeply into the country's economy. The Alamutis symbolize a globalized version of old money, African in origin, but international in reach. Their fortune doesn't rely on one sector alone, but on a carefully built web of industries that ensure resilience against market shifts. This is the kind of wealth that doesn't just survive, it dominates. Their story reminds us that Africa's old money isn't confined to its borders. Some dynasties carry their influence across oceans, shaping economies on multiple continents while still being deeply tied to African soil. And as we climb higher in this countdown, the families we'll meet are even more entrenched in history. In the number 4 position, we have the extended Dantata legacy of Nigeria, a family whose wealth goes back more than a century and still shapes Africa's economy today. The name Alhassan Dantata is legendary in West Africa. Born in 1877, he rose from modest beginnings to dominate the groundnut trade, becoming the richest man in West Africa by the 1950s. His fortune was rooted in agriculture, land, and trade, industries that were the backbone of Nigerian commerce long before oil. By the time he passed in 1955, he had not only built immense wealth, but also laid the foundation for a dynasty that continues to thrive. The Dantata family's reach extends far beyond their patriarch. Through generations, they've spread into banking, real estate, and industry, with descendants playing vital roles in Nigeria's economy. Among the most famous heirs is Aliko Dangote, Africa's richest man, who transformed the family legacy into the Dangote Group, now worth billions. But Aliko is not alone. Other descendants of the Dantata line control businesses in logistics, construction, and agriculture, ensuring the Dantata influence is everywhere. What makes the Dantata legacy truly old money is its depth. This is not wealth created in the past 30 years. It is fortune that has been passed down, expanded, and adapted across nearly a century and a half. Each generation inherits not only capital, but also networks, credibility, and a name that commands respect in Nigerian society. The Dantata name opens doors in politics, finance, and trade, a power that money alone cannot buy. Their influence is also cultural. The Dantatas are deeply rooted in northern Nigeria's traditions and history. Their story is told not only in business schools but in family circles, where the legacy of Alhassan Dantata is still celebrated as proof that African wealth is not new, but enduring. The family's continuing impact across industries shows that their story is far from over. The Dantata dynasty is a living example of old money at its finest. Wealth so deep and so rooted that it outlives generations, evolving with time, but never losing its strength. In the number 3 position, we return to the Oppenheimer family of South Africa because their story is too vast, too entrenched, and too important to be told in one chapter. If chapter 5 was about how they built their fortune, this chapter is about how they've preserved and transformed it in the modern era. Proof of how old money adapts without losing power. When the Oppenheimers sold their 40% stake in De Beers in 2012, many thought it was the end of their dominance. In reality, it was a masterstroke. By cashing out for billions, they freed themselves from the volatility of the diamond industry while securing vast capital for future generations. That decision marked the transition from a mining empire to a diversified wealth dynasty. Today, Nicky Oppenheimer and his family focus on investments, conservation, and philanthropy. Their company, Stockdale Street, manages wealth across sectors, from private equity to agriculture. They've invested in African startups, renewable energy, and global ventures, ensuring that the Oppenheimer name remains tied to progress, not just history. At the same time, they are one of Africa's largest private landowners, with conservation reserves that protect wildlife and attract international tourism. What's striking about the Oppenheimer legacy is how it blends quiet influence with visible impact. They no longer dominate headlines the way they did when De Beers controlled the world's diamonds. But behind the scenes, their power is undeniable. Their wealth is estimated at billions. Their networks remain global, and their prestige still places them among Africa's most respected families. The Oppenheimers show that old money doesn't die, it reinvents itself. From controlling diamonds to shaping conservation and investments, they've managed to stay relevant, powerful, and wealthy in a changing world. Their story is a reminder that true dynasties don't just make fortunes, they protect them, adapt them, and pass them on. In the number 2 position, we have Johann Rupert and his family, heirs to one of Africa's greatest fortunes and stewards of a dynasty that has become a global powerhouse in luxury. If Anton Rupert laid the foundation with Rembrandt and Richemont, Johann Rupert turned that legacy into a fortress. Today, he is not only the head of the Rupert Empire, but also the wealthiest individual in Africa, with a net worth of more than $14 billion. Under Johann's leadership, Compagnie Financière Richemont has grown into one of the largest luxury conglomerates in the world. The group owns some of the most iconic brands on earth: Cartier, Montblanc, Van Cleef and Arpels, Piaget, Chloé, and Dunhill. These are not just products, they are symbols of status, taste, and timeless elegance. Each time someone wears a Cartier watch or signs a contract with a Montblanc pen, they are interacting with the Rupert fortune. But Johann Rupert has done more than just guard his father's empire. He has expanded it. Through Remgro, the family holds stakes in everything from banking and healthcare to media and energy. Their investments reach far beyond South Africa, making the Rupert dynasty truly global. What makes them old money is how carefully they balance growth with preservation, ensuring the wealth remains steady across generations. Johann himself is known for his private, understated lifestyle, a stark contrast to the glitz of the brands he owns. This discretion is a hallmark of old money dynasties: power that doesn't need to shout, wealth that doesn't need to flash. Instead, it is felt everywhere, quietly shaping industries, influencing culture, and commanding respect. As Africa's richest man, Johann Rupert stands at the intersection of legacy and leadership. He represents what it means when a family fortune doesn't just survive but thrives, passing from one generation to the next with even greater strength. Yet as powerful as Johann is today, the final chapter of our countdown belongs to something bigger: the Rupert dynasty itself. In the number 1 position, we have the Rupert dynasty, the ultimate symbol of old money in Africa. More than a fortune, more than a family, the Ruperts represent an institution of wealth that has endured for nearly a century and shows no sign of slowing down. The dynasty began with Anton Rupert's small cigarette company in the 1940s. With just £10 in capital, he built Rembrandt Group, then expanded into wine, healthcare, and banking. He was a visionary, but what he truly left behind was not just money, it was a system, a structure that ensured the Rupert fortune would last for generations. Today, that structure is alive and thriving through Richemont and Remgro, companies that sit at the heart of global luxury and African industry. At the summit, the Ruperts are not just wealthy, they are embedded in the DNA of global luxury. Their brands are household names in the most affluent homes across Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and America. Unlike other African dynasties tied mainly to natural resources, the Ruperts have built a legacy out of timeless symbols: jewelry, watches, pens, and fine wine. Products that carry not just price tags, but emotions, memories, and prestige. This is what makes them the richest old money family in Africa. Their wealth is not fragile, not dependent on a single sector, and not tied to politics or volatile commodities. It is diversified, global, and immortal. The Rupert dynasty has turned luxury into legacy, transforming their name into one of the most respected in Africa and beyond. As the curtain falls on this countdown, the message is clear. Old money dynasties are not just about wealth. They are about patience, vision, and the ability to pass power across generations. The Ruperts stand as the pinnacle of this tradition in Africa, proving that true wealth is not just counted in billions, but in endurance.